The gleaming conference room of Wilson Global's headquarters buzzed with anticipation. Senior executives in bespoke suits arranged their leather portfolios, whispering about the mysterious merger proposal from Sterling Enterprises. My brother Michael, Wilson Global's CFO, held court at one end of the mahogany table, already celebrating what he assumed would be another triumph. I stood quietly by the coffee station, arranging cups and creamer exactly as I had every morning for the past 3 years. My simple gray dress and minimal makeup helped me fade into the background. Just another corporate secretary, invisible to the power players around the table. "Emma," Michael called out without looking up from his phone, "make sure it's the premium roast this time. Sterling So is finally showing up and we can't serve them that cheap stuff you brought last week." If only he knew that I had deliberately served the cheap coffee, testing how the executives treated service staff. The results had been enlightening to say the least. "Yes, Mr. Wilson," I replied softly, hiding my smile as I prepared the expensive Brazilian roast that I'd actually imported for my private estate. The room gradually filled with Wilson Global's top brass. Dad, officially retired but still chairman of the board, took his usual seat at the head of the table. He patted Michael's shoulder proudly as he passed, his heir apparent, the son who'd saved the company after the recession. "Everyone ready?" Dad asked, straightening his tie. "Sterling Enterprises isn't known for waiting around. Their CEO is supposedly quite aggressive in acquisitions." I bit back a laugh. They had no idea just how aggressive I could be. "Don't worry, Dad," Michael assured him. "I've gone over their financials. They need this merger more than we do. We'll have them accepting our terms before lunch." Poor Michael. Always so confident, yet completely unaware that the financials he'd reviewed were carefully crafted decoys. The real numbers would tell a very different story. "Emma," he snapped his fingers at me, "coffee service. And try not to spill it this time." I hadn't spilled a drop in 3 years. But Michael loved reminding everyone about my first day when nervousness had made my hands shake. Back then I'd been testing the waters, seeing if anyone would recognize the daughter who'd left 10 years ago to find herself. They hadn't. Not even my own family. The door opened and Harrison Wright, Sterling's lead counsel, entered. I'd hired him specifically for this meeting, knowing his reputation for being ruthlessly thorough. "Good morning," Harrison nodded to the room. "Before we begin, I'll need to distribute these documents." I watched as he handed out thick folders marked confidential. "Right on schedule. Where's your CO?" Michael demanded. "We were told Sterling's owner would be here personally." "Oh, they are," Harrison smiled slightly. "In fact, they've been here all along." My moment had arrived. I stepped forward from the coffee station, removing the plain glasses I'd worn as part of my disguise. "The premium roast is ready," I announced, my voice carrying the authority I'd hidden for 3 years. "Though I doubt anyone will be thinking about coffee in about 30 seconds. Dad's head snapped up. Michael's smirk froze. "Emma." Dad's voice held a note of confusion I'd never heard before. "What are you doing?" "We need to start the meeting." "Open the folders," I suggested, casually leaning against the conference table. "Page 1 should be particularly interesting." The sound of rustling paper filled the room. Then, one by one, the expressions around the table changed from confusion to shock. This can't be right," Michael stammered, flipping pages frantically. "Sterling Enterprises. Owned by Emma Wilson." "That's right, little brother," I smiled. "Though most people know me as E.J. Sterling, CEO of Sterling Enterprises." Surprise. Dad's hands trembled as he read the documents. But you've been working here as a secretary." "Administrative assistant," I corrected him. "Yes, I have. Learning everything about how this company really operates. Who makes the actual decisions. Who takes credit for others' work. Who treats support staff like they're invisible." "This is impossible," Michael declared, but his voice had lost its usual confidence. "You disappeared after college. Ran off to find yourself, or whatever." I moved to the head of the table, gently but firmly indicating that Dad should move from my new seat. "Oh, I found myself all right. Found myself building one of the largest private equity firms in the country while you were busy running this company into the ground." "Running it into?" Michael's face reddened. "Wilson Global's profits have doubled since I took over." "Have they?" I pulled out another set of documents. Or have you just been moving numbers around hoping nobody would look too closely at the shell companies you created? His face went from red to white. That's right, brother dear. I know about all of them. The fake subsidiaries, the hidden debts, the creative accounting you've used to make yourself look like a financial genius. Dad, Michael appealed to our father. You can't let her do this. She abandoned the company. Abandoned the family. Dad just stared at the documents, reality finally sinking in. Actually, Harrison spoke up, Ms. Wilson, or Ms. Sterling as she's legally known, has every right. Sterling Enterprises now controls 51% of Wilson Global's outstanding shares, acquired through various subsidiaries over the past year. I picked up one of the coffee cups I'd prepared, taking a slow sip as I watched their worlds crumble. Premium Brazilian roast, I commented. Much better than the cheap stuff you accused me of serving, isn't it, Michael? The conference room erupted into chaos. Board members frantically flipped through the merger documents, their faces growing paler with each page. Michael had loosened his tie, sweat beading on his forehead as he scrolled through his phone, probably trying to contact his lawyers. The shares, Dad finally managed, his voice barely a whisper. How did we not notice? Notice? I laughed softly. When was the last time any of you actually checked the shareholder registry? Too busy congratulating yourselves on your supposed success to see who was really buying up the company. Harrison began distributing another set of documents. These detail the current financial status of Wilson Global, including all previously undisclosed liabilities and hidden accounts. Michael lunged across the table trying to grab the papers. Those are confidential. Nothing is confidential from the majority shareholder, I reminded him. Including the offshore accounts you've been using to hide the company's real losses. Did you really think nobody would notice $50 million missing from the pension fund? The board members began murmuring among themselves. Several pulled out their phones, no doubt calling their personal lawyers. The pension fund? Dad turned to Michael. You said those investments were secure. They were. Michael protested, but his voice cracked. I was protecting the company's interests. By gambling with employees' retirement savings? I stood up, my voice sharp. By using shell companies to hide the fact that Wilson Global is practically insolvent. Insolvent, one of the board members echoed. But our quarterly reports were fiction, I finished for him. Creative writing courtesy of my brother's financial genius. Would you like to see the real numbers? I nodded to Harrison, who pulled up a presentation on the conference room screen. The graphs told a story very different from the rosy picture Michael had been painting. As you can see, I continued, Wilson Global's actual debt is triple what's been reported. The recent acquisitions Michael bragged about, funded with borrowed money and hidden through a maze of shell companies. You had no right to access those records, Michael sputtered. I had every right. While you were ordering me to fetch coffee, I was conducting a thorough audit of every aspect of this company. Amazing what people will say around someone they think is just a secretary. Dad had aged 10 years in the past 10 minutes. Why, Emma? Why go to all this trouble? Remember when I presented my restructuring plan 7 years ago? Before I ran off to find myself? You and Michael laughed me out of this very room. Said I didn't understand how real business worked. That plan was unrealistic, Michael protested weakly. Was it? Because I took that same plan and built Sterling Enterprises into a company 10 times the size of Wilson Global. While you were playing corporate raider with Daddy's money, I was creating real value. My phone buzzed. A message from my real executive team. SEC investigators ready to move on your signal regarding the pension fund irregularities. Of course, I continued, the pension fund issue is just the beginning. The SEC is particularly interested in those offshore accounts, Michael. And the false reports to shareholders. And the insider trading. Michael's face went completely white. Insider trading? I never. The Davidson merger last year? I pulled up another document. You bought shares through a shell company 2 days before the deal was announced. Did you really think nobody would trace that back to you? The board members were now openly distancing themselves from Michael, physically moving their chairs away from him. Dad, he pleaded. You have to stop this. She's trying to destroy everything we built. Everything you destroyed, you mean? I corrected him. I'm here to save what's left of this company. Though that won't include your executive position or your seat on the board. Harrison distributed another set of papers. These are the immediate changes to corporate governance. Mr. Michael Wilson is hereby removed from his position as CFO, pending investigation into financial misconduct. You can't fire me. Michael shouted, standing up so abruptly his chair crashed backward. I'm a Wilson. This is my company. Not anymore, I said quietly. Sterling Enterprises owns controlling interest now. And unlike you, I know how to run a company properly. Dad finally found his voice again. The Wilson name, our reputation, will survive, I assured him. Once we've cleaned up Michael's mess and implemented proper corporate governance. Though it might help if you finally retired completely instead of rubber stamping everything Michael does. The room had grown eerily quiet. The only sound the rustle of papers as the board members continued reading through the evidence of Michael's mismanagement. One more thing, I added, picking up my coffee cup again. From now on everyone gets the same coffee. Premium roast. Because in my companies, we treat all employees with respect. Even the ones serving the coffee. The aftermath of my revelation rippled through the corporate world like a tsunami. By afternoon, Wilson Global stock had been temporarily suspended from trading as the market digested the news. Financial reporters camped out in the lobby, hungry for details about the secretary who secretly controlled one of the largest private equity firms in the country. I sat in my new office, formerly Michael's corner suite, reviewing the damage reports from our forensic accountants. The numbers were even worse than I'd suspected. Ms. Sterling, Harrison entered with another stack of documents. The SEC wants to move forward with charges against Michael. They're particularly interested in the pension fund manipulation. Of course they are, I murmured, thinking of all the employees whose retirements had been gambled away by my brother's arrogance. Make sure they have everything they need. My phone buzzed continuously with messages from family members who'd suddenly remembered my existence. Mom, darling, please call us. We need to understand what's happening. Aunt Patricia, such a clever girl. I always knew you had potential. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years, all suddenly remembering our close relationship. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the task of saving Wilson Global from the mess Michael had created. A soft knock at the door interrupted my work. Dad stood there looking older and smaller than I'd ever seen him. The security guard made me get a visitor's pass, he said quietly. To enter my own company. Not your company anymore, I reminded him. Though you stopped truly running it years ago, didn't you? Just let Michael do whatever he wanted while you played golf and attended charity galas. He sank into a chair across from me. I trusted him. He was so confident, so sure of himself. No, I cut him off. You favored him. There's a difference. You favored him when he tanked his first 3 businesses and you bailed him out. Favored him when he drove the European division into the ground. Favored him when he dismissed every female executive's ideas because women don't understand real business. And you, he asked. Did building all this make you happy? Prove us wrong. I finally looked up from my reports. This isn't about proving you wrong, Dad. It's about proving myself right. Every time you dismissed my ideas, every time Michael mocked my lack of business sense, I was building something real. Something lasting. The press is calling you a corporate raider, he said. The press doesn't understand. I don't raid companies, I save them. Transform them. Turn them into what they should have been all along. A commotion outside drew our attention. Through the glass walls, we could see Michael being escorted out by security, a box of personal items in his arms. His designer suit was wrinkled, his carefully styled hair disheveled. He'll face criminal charges, I said quietly. The pension fund fraud alone carries a significant sentence. Prison. Dad's face crumpled. My son in prison? Actions have consequences. Something you never taught him. My phone buzzed again. The forensic team had found even more irregularities. Client funds misappropriated, contracts awarded to friends for kickbacks, a pattern of deception that spanned years. You know, Dad said slowly, I always wondered why you stayed after that day we rejected your restructuring plan. Worked your way up from the secretary pool. I stayed because I needed to understand this company from every angle. While Michael was playing CEO, I was learning how things really worked. What the employees really thought. Where the real problems were. Another knock. My actual executive team had arrived from Sterling Enterprises. Harvard MBAs and seasoned executives who'd helped me build my empire, now here to help save my family's company. Time for the transition meeting, I told Dad. You should go home. Rest. Let us handle this. He stood slowly, straightening his tie one last time. The family dinners. Will you still? No, I said firmly. Those ended when you and Michael laughed me out of the boardroom 7 years ago. But maybe once you've both learned some humility we can start over. As equals this time. The next few weeks transformed Wilson Global. Michael's cronies were cleared out, replaced by competent professionals. The hidden debts were brought into the open, dealt with through Sterling's resources. The pension fund was restored with interest. The headlines told the story. Secretary to CEO, the most remarkable corporate takeover in history. Wilson Global scandal. Brothers downfall, sisters rise. Sterling Enterprises reveals true owner. Corporate world's greatest undercover boss. But they missed the real story. This wasn't about revenge or even justice. It was about transformation. Of a company, of a family, of an entire way of doing business. Michael eventually pled guilty to multiple charges of financial fraud. Dad finally retired completely. The board was restructured with truly independent directors. Me. I moved my office to a different floor, converting Michael's former suite into a daycare center for employees' children. 6 months later, I received an invitation to Dad's retirement party. The note read, I finally understand what you tried to tell us years ago. About building something real. About treating people with respect. I'm sorry we didn't listen then. Will you give us a chance to listen now? I thought about all the board meetings where they dismissed me, mocked me, treated me as less than them. Then I thought about my grandfather's old saying, success isn't in what you take but in what you build.